What's good, math family? In this video, we're going to look at a complete EOC practice exam. We have about 45 examples, and I've attached the practice test down below in the description box for those who want to practice or utilize this resource. Let's get started. In problem number 1, what they want us to do is rearrange the equation and isolate and solve for e. So anytime we have a fraction, we should always just get rid of the fraction by multiplying by the denominator. So we have 9 times e is equal to a times n. And now to get e by itself, we're going to divide by 9. So the equation when we solve for e is going to be e is equal to a times n divided by 9. And we look at our answer choices, this will be answer choice B. In problem number 2, we have an equation and they want us to pick the correct graph. And the best method to do this is checking the x-intercept. Because the x-intercept, there's different x-intercept for every problem, or every answer choice, I should say. So when we make y 0, we have 7x is equal to 14, and we know our x-intercept is equal to 2. So we're looking for that ordered pair 2, 0. A has this ordered pair. When we look at B, it's negative 2, 0. We don't want that. I'm sorry, answer choice C. When we look at B down at the bottom left, they put the x-intercept as the y. That's incorrect. And then when we look at answer choice D, this is the incorrect x and y intercept. So we know the answer choice is A. If you go ahead and also try to figure out the y-intercept, the y-intercept should be 3.5 when we divide 14 by 4. But this problem we don't have to find both of them to get the correct answer. Problem number 3 is very similar to the previous problem, but the difference is we have to make sure we pick the correct shading. So the first thing I would tell you to do is let's just put this in slope-intercept form. So we subtract 4x and we're left with 5y is greater than or equal to negative 4x plus 10. I did it like this because now we know that whatever graph we pick, it's supposed to be a negative slope. Answer choice A is a positive slope and answer choice B is a positive slope. So now it's either going to be answer choice C or answer choice D. And I'm going to pick the order pair 0, 0 and plug it into the original equation, right? So once we do this, we notice that we're going to have the statement 0 is greater than or equal to 10. So because this is not a true statement, we're going to shade in the area that does not have this point, which would be answer choice C. D and where the shading is going to be incorrect. So problem number 4, we're dealing with compound inequalities. And because we have this word or, we know that this graph is going to be going in the opposite direction. So answer choice C, D are gone. So when we split this now, we have 2x minus 1 less than or equal to 3. We add 1 on both sides. And then once we divide by 2, we know x is going to be less than or equal to positive 2. This is the first answer choice. So when we look at our answer choices now, A looks like the best answer, right? Because B, this is an open circle and it should not be, right? So we could actually stop right here, family, because this is the correct answer. We know based on the sign that one is going to be a closed circle and one's going to be an open circle. But let's say you wanted to double check and just make sure. So we have 1/2 x plus 4 is greater than 7. We subtract. Now 1/2 x is greater than 3. Once we multiply by 2 to get rid of this fraction, x is greater than 6. And at this point, it's going to be a open circle, which it is. Answer choice B is incorrect because they did not take into account the correct shading or an open circle. We're dealing with another inequality problem, and just by the looks of this, the only way we're going to get this wrong is if we forget the most important inequality rule. So let's say I add x on both sides. this is what we have left. Negative 2x plus 7 greater than or equal to negative 5. Now, when I subtract 7, what we're going to have is negative 2x is greater than or equal to negative 12. But mind you, family, we're going to divide by a negative x, right? That negative 2x. And when we do that, our sign is going to have to flip. So this is now going to be less than or equal to. So what we're going to have is x is now less than or equal to positive 6 because we divided a negative by a negative. And as a result, answer choice is going to be A. Please don't forget this rule because they're definitely going to test you on it. In problem number 6, they ask us what is the sum of the two expressions? And all we have to do is just add and combine like terms. So what I would do is take the second expression and write it right under the first one. And just please be mindful that even if we have the same variable, if there's different exponent powers, they're not considered like terms. So we simplify to get 9x, and then we have 5x to the third. This is our final expression. We can't combine those two, and the final answer would be answer choice C. So we now are dealing with systems of equations, and they want us to find a solution. And the best method, family, is to use substitution since they isolated y. So for us to do that, we go to the second expression, 2x plus 5y, but now we replace y with what I highlighted. So 2x plus 2 is equal to 19. We simplify, and this is what we're going to have. Now once I combine like terms, we have 12x plus 10 is equal to 19. We subtract 10 on both sides, so now we have 12x is equal to 9. After we divide now, family, we're going to get x is equal to, and I made a small mistake, that's supposed to be 12. X is equal to 9 over 12, but we have to reduce the fraction. If we divide by 3, we're going to get x is equal to 3 over 4. Now, when we look at our answer choices, we should already know that the correct answer is answer choice A, because that's the only answer choice that has the correct x value. We don't even need to worry about the y. But let's say we just wanted to make sure we got it right. So let's just go back and plug this in. So we go back to the first equation, y is equal to 2 times x, which is now 3 over 4, plus 2. When we simplify, we're going to get y is equal to 6 over 4 plus 2. Right? I change 2 into a fraction. So we have 6 over 4 plus 8 over 4. And what we're going to get is y is equal to 14 over 4. We don't see that answer, but if we reduce this fraction and turn it into a mixed number, 4 goes into 14 3 times with 2 out of 4 left over. We know this simplifies to 3 1/2. So we definitely know that answer choice A is the correct answer. Problem number 8, simple problem. They ask us which expression is equivalent to radical 3. We should know that the answer choice is just B. Anytime you have a square root, it's just taking that number to the 1/2 power. And when we look at this, the answer choices here, we have a base of 3. So what does that mean? That means A and C are automatically gone because we don't have the correct base. And if we look at answer choice C, for this to be the correct answer choice, it would have to be radical 1 over 3, because then we would write it as 1 over 3 to the 1/2 power. So we know that is definitely not the correct answer. Problem number 9 asks us which statement correctly interprets the scatter plot. And we have to be mindful that this still relates to slope, and this is a positive slope. So when we look at our answer choices, we are going to eliminate answer choice B and answer choice D because it's not a negative correlation. That means it will be a negative slope. So now we have to determine, is it a weak positive correlation or a strong positive correlation? The reason why it's going to be answer choice C, because when we look at these points that surround that line, they're very close to it. A weak correlation would be something like this, where those points are not closely aligned with that line. Just as an example, most of those points are close or following that trend line, so that means it's going to be a strong positive relationship slash correlation. So problem number 10 can be tricky because it's a fill in the blank problem. But the way we want to start this off is isolating the variable. So we're going to add 21 on both sides. So we're going to get 3x squared is equal to 243. We're going to divide by 3. We have x squared is equal to 81. And right now we're really just using the square root method. So we're going to take square root of the left side to cancel out the exponent, do the same thing on the other side. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 81. Once we take this further, this is going to be plus or minus 9. So it only asks for one solution. So we could put either positive 9 or negative 9. You could put either or because both of them are solutions. I would say just always stick with the positive number just to be on the safe side. Problem number 11 is an exponential function. They give us a graph and they want us to match the equation. So the equation normally takes the format y is equal to a times 1 plus or minus r to the t power, but they replace t with x, and that's just the time period. So if we understand what a stands for, that's just the initial value, 0.2. So we know it can't be answer choice C, answer choice D. So now for us to pick the correct answer, all we need to do is just substitute and simplify. And I'm going to use this as a test point. So for answer choice A, we want to know f of x is now equal to 0.2 times 1 minus 0.1 to the first power, right? And then for the second answer choice, we have f of x is equal to 0.2 times 1 minus 0.5 to the 1 power. And what we're looking for is that the answer choice is going to be 0.1. This will let us know which equation is actually correct. So when we simplify, let's go back to blue. We're going to have f of x is equal to 0.2 times 0.9. So once we multiply that by 0.2, we're going to get f of x is equal to 0.18. That's not correct. So we should already know that is going to be answer choice B. And just remember, anything to the first power is itself. So after we take care of what's in the parentheses, that is not going to change. And that is why I picked that specific point. It makes it easier. So if we go back and we just check out the second answer choice B, which is in red, we have f of x is equal to 0.2 times 0.5, right? Let's put a 0 in front. And once we multiply these two together, we notice that f of x is going to be equal to 0.1, which is correct. So this is one way that you could kind of guess and check to solve these type of problems. So we're on to question number 12. And if this video has been helpful so far, family, comment down below, smash the like button so we could put out more content like this. So anytime you're multiplying two binomials, unless it's the difference of squares, our answer is going to be a trinomial. You have to know that, okay? And what we're going to do right now is I really like to use the box method with these type of problems. So we put 7k and 2 on the top. 5k and -9 on the bottom. We could put it the other way if we want to, but we have to keep what's in parentheses with each other. So this turns into 35k squared plus 10k minus 63k minus 18. And what we're really looking for is what this is going to equal to. So when we have negative 63k and we add a positive 10k to it, that's going to give us negative 53k. So we know the answer choice is going to be answer choice C. Problem number 13, they want us to match the function with its correct graph. And we just have to remember that this equation or function is in point slope form and we have to simplify. So we have y plus 1 is equal to 2x plus 6. And then when we simplify by subtracting 1, we know y is equal to 2x plus 5. So 5 is the most important thing right now because we know that this graph has a y-intercept of 5. And the only graph that has a positive 5 as its y-intercept is going to be answer choice A. So problem number 14, they want us to determine if this situation represents a linear, exponential, or quadratic function. And when we look at this, the most important thing is understanding that Garrett feeds his dog 2 cups of dog food each day. And this is important because we understand that this change is a constant change. So that already lets us know it is linear. And if he has a big bag and he takes 2 scoops out every day, we know that it's a negative linear relationship because every day the dog food has 2 less cups. So problem 15 is a challenging problem, and it's a little bit of a spin-off from the previous example because they want us to determine which one of these is a quadratic function. So when we look at answer choice A, we notice that the change in y is times 3 again, and then from 27 to 81 is times 3. So A is more likely an exponential function. Now, when we look at answer choice B in the bottom left, we notice that there's a change of -2. So when we go from -4 to -6, same thing, change of -2, they subtract 2. So we know this is going to be a linear equation. Now when we get over to answer choice C, this one's a little different. So when we're looking at this, we notice that the first change is -1, second change +1, and then in our third change, we know that this is +3. And anytime you see this, what we have to do is then go back in and determine what is the relationship in the change in y. And this is what I mean. So what is the change from -1 to +1? That is +2. Then when we go over to 1 to 3, this is another change of +2. When you see a constant change in y like this is a quadratic function. So the correct answer should be answer choice C. And I will have a video linked down below if you need help with this topic. But when we look at even answer choice D, right, this is going to be linear because this is a constant change of 0. Anytime you have a constant change, like I said before, that typically lets you know that you have a linear function. Problem number 16 is asking us which function has the greatest slope. So we know we're in y is equal to mx plus b form. So we're saying which m is the largest. We know it's not answer choice B because that's negative. Answer choice C, that's 0.75. Answer choice D, this is 1.5. And then when we look at answer choice A, this is 1 2/3. So just comparing these three answer choices, the largest one is going to be 1 2/3. That's 1.666. That is greater than 1.5. Please just make sure you understand what they're asking with this question because it should be more on the simple side. So we have systems of equations for problem number 17, and they want us to pick the correct solution set, aka graph. So x is less than 3. So when we plot that, that is a horizontal dashed line, and everything to the left or less than 3 is going to be shaded. Then when we go over to the other one, y is greater than or equal to -3, that is a horizontal line that's going to be solid, and everything that is above this line is what's going to be shaded. Now, when we look at our answer choices, answer choice D is not correct. When we look at this shaded area, this is less than -3. Wrong. When we look at answer choice C, top right, this area should not be shaded because it doesn't satisfy y is greater than or equal to -3. When we get over to answer choice B, this area should not be shaded because there are x values that are greater than 3. We want x values that are less than 3. So our correct answer has to be answer choice A. Why? When you look at it, there is no shading below y is greater than or equal to -3. So that's correct. And when we look at the first equation, x is less than 3, there are no x's that are shaded that are greater than 3. They have to be less than. So please just understand how the shading works. A is the correct answer. So problem number 18, they want us to determine the range of the function. And there's just a few things we need to understand to make this an easy problem. Number one, t, it represents the time in seconds. That's the x variable. And y is going to be the height in feet. They told us that the ball is on a balcony, right? So let's just say we draw, we got a little balcony right here. This is 20 feet above the ground. We know the ground is basically 0 feet. So the highest it could go is 20, the lowest is 0. Answer choice A, B are gone. Now, we know it can't be C because C has the variable t, which is time. So automatically that's eliminated because we're not talking about time. We're talking about y, which is feet. So please make sure you don't make that mistake with choosing the incorrect variable. You have to know which variable stands for what in the problem. So problem number 19 asks us, which equation models exponential growth? We know exponential growth is going to take the format y is equal to a times 1 plus r to the t power. Sometimes they use x instead. And the most important thing we have to understand is that if it's going to be a growth factor, what's inside the parentheses, right, when we combine it is going to be greater than 1. So when we look at our answer choices, the only answer choice that has a growth factor greater than 1 is answer choice B. A, C, and D are going to be exponential decay because that factor inside the parentheses is smaller than 1. So problem number 20 is a spin-off from the previous example. And I want you to understand it's going to take the same format. The only difference now is when we look at what's inside the parentheses, it's not going to be a plus sign. It's going to be minus. So we should know that when we simplify what's inside the parentheses, that value is going to be less than 1. Answer choice A, this is linear. Answer choice B, linear. Answer choice C, this would be exponential growth because it is greater than 1. But when we look at answer choice D, this will be exponentially decaying because that factor is less than 1. It's the best way to approach these type of problems. So problem 21 wants us to basically select the correct substitution. And we're talking about the point slope formula. So y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And they give us all the information. M is 0.2 and Our point is 11, 5. So when we look at this, this is going to be y minus y1, which is 5, is equal to negative 0.2 times x minus 11. So when we look at this in the first answer, y minus 5, right, is equal to our slope, negative 0.2. And then inside the parentheses, we have x minus the x coordinate, which is 11. This will only be complicated if you forget that point slope formula. So problem 22, they want us to simplify the polynomial by dividing. And what I normally tell students is to just kind of separate this and use properties of exponents, because this is going to factor in, right? Because we're talking about that quotient rule. So 4 divided by 2 is x. X squared divided by x is just x. So off rip, just from the first one, we already know answer choice is A. But I know we want to double check. So negative 18x divided by 2x, x's cancel out, that's minus 9. Then in the last one, because there's only one x, it's going to have to stay, but we'll simplify 6 over 2 to be 3 over x. So just please make sure when you're dealing with these type of problems, you review properties of exponents, because that's going to be a big part of you getting the problem correct or not. In problem 23, they give us an equation and they ask us, what type of function does the equation represent? Honestly, family, anytime you see an equation where we have an exponent of 2, that should always signify to you that this is a quadratic function. If it was cubic, it would have an exponent of 3, and we've already touched on the format and equation for exponential equations. They give us a function, and they're asking us, how can h of 15 be evaluated? So if we're evaluating this, right, we would substitute the x in, and then we'd have 1 over 5 times 15 squared. So answer choice C and D are gone because there's no dividing going on, and we're not squaring 1, 5. What we're doing is we're going to square 15 and then multiply that by 1 over 5. So the correct answer choice should be A. Just be mindful of the word choice and how they try to trick you with these type of problems. Problem number 25 is dealing with vocabulary. And the best way to approach this problem is just starting off with the difference between numerical and categorical data. So numerical is going to be numbers, right? Such as 1, 2, and 3. And categorical is going to be kind of like a description or an item. So when we look on the x-axis, they're talking about bus, cars, and walking. That's going to be categorical. So we automatically eliminate A and C. Now, when we go back and we talk about univariate and bivariate, this is saying, hey, are we focusing or comparing? Are we just focusing on one variable? Or are we comparing two variables? And when we look at the key, they're comparing two variables, one between 11th graders and the other with 12th graders. So our correct answer choice is going to be answer choice B. Problem number 26 wants us to simplify the expression by factoring, and we're going to use the GCF. So we're going to pull out 7, right? And then when we look at our variables for r and the exponents, we could at least take out a r squared. And then when we go to s, same thing. We could at least take out s squared. So what's left in the parentheses for the first one is we divided 42 by 7, so we have 6. We took out r squared, so that single r is left in to get us to r to the third, right? We pulled out s squared, so it's not there for that first part of the expression. Then we go over to 35. We know this is going to be 5. And then when we look, we pulled out r squared, so it's gone. All we have left is s. So the correct answer choice is going to be answer choice C. And when we multiply and distribute this back, right, 7 times 6 gives us 42. R squared times R gives me R to the third. S squared there's nothing to multiply, so it stays the same. And then we go to the second part of the expression, we're going to get minus 35. We have R squared there, right? It stays the same because there's no other R. And S times S squared is going to give us S to the third power. Just double check your answer with these type of problems because the properties of exponents may trip you up or can trip you up. In the next example, they give us a graph and they want us to determine which equation represents the line. So because of this negative here for the y-intercept, A and C are both eliminated. Now for us to determine whether it's B or D, we need to pick points on the graph. So we could pick this point right here because it lines up perfectly, and this point. And what we need to do is just determine a rise over run. Is it going to be 3 over 5 or 5 over 3? So we're going to go for our rise up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over 1, 2, 3. So we know we have a rise over run of 5 over 3. So that means the correct answer or the equation would be D. Please always try to use process of elimination because when you use it, you give yourself at least a 50-50 chance. In problem number 28, they want us to determine what is the projected population in 2040. And they gave us the equation y is equal to 2.33x plus 92.05. But you have to be mindful, they're talking about the population since 1920. So for us to properly answer this problem, we're going to have to subtract 1920 from 2040. And when we do, we're going to get 120. So this is going to represent the years that passed since 1920, and this is what we plug in for x. So once we simplify, or we plug in, I should say, this is what the initial equation is going to look like. Then when we simplify one step further, we're going to get 279.6 plus 92.05. And once we add these two together for our final answer, we're going to get y is equal to 371.65 million people. So this is going to be the projected population in 2040. Problem number 28 gives us a real world context, and they want us to use systems of equations to represent it. So it's always good to define what the variables represent. So we could say x is equal to account A and y is equal to account B. And it says that Bashir has $3,410 to invest, right? It doesn't say at least. So we need to understand that that is an equal sign. So answer choice D is gone. So if he has $3,410 to invest in two different accounts, what is that saying? All right, when we add account A plus account B, it should be equal to 3,410. So when we look at answer choice C, we could eliminate it. Now what we need to do is determine, is it going to be answer choice A or answer choice B? So when we look at it, it's the second part says account A earns 6% interest, account B earns 2% interest, and he wants to earn at least $196 in interest. So what does that mean? Well, think about it. Account A, we take that percent and convert it to a decimal. This is going to be 0.06x, because that's account A, plus 0.02. Y is at least, so greater than or equal to 196. So when we look at our answer choices, it has to be answer choice B. Answer choice A, what they did was they switch accounts A and B. So just be mindful of those small little tricks that they may use to try to get you. So problem number 30, they want us to determine what type of function does this graph represent. And when we look at y, the change in y, we notice that it's going to be constant, right? It's going to be a constant of 2. So that lets us know that it is linear. And when you're thinking about it from the rental company, the more or the longer that people rent, the more money they make. So what that means is that this function is increasing linear. In this next example, they give us a scenario where an artist is selling paintings and they use y to represent the number. But what they are asking us about is which expression represents the cost. There's two ways you could look at this. If you understand just profit and cost, you know that cost you subtract. And the only thing that we're subtracting is 10.53y. So that's the easier, quicker way to do it. If you want to break down the whole expression, you could look at it and say, okay, every painting or every order that he gets, it probably costs $200, but we don't know the amount. And there's probably some type of tax that the individual pays the artist or a shipping fee. And every time that the artist gets a new request, he has to go out or she has to go out and buy the materials, which is the second part of the expression, to make the painting. So two ways to think about this, but I would definitely go with the first, because anytime you have a cost, that means we are going to be subtracting. So they give us another problem where we're dealing with rearranging formulas, and this could come off a little confusing because the way they word it. They say complete the equation to represent V in terms of D and R. But just try to use clues and say, okay, V is equal to. So if this is V is equal to, that means they want me to get V by itself. So all I need to do, right, if V is being multiplied by R, we just need to divide by R. And the equation will be V is equal to D over R. We're on to problem number 33. But if this video has been helpful, family, don't forget to smash the like button for us and just comment down below so we could put out more helpful content for you. So they're talking about two divers and we're talking about the different depths that they could be at. Luckily, with this absolute value equation, we don't have to do anything further before we set it up. At this step, all we need to do is just create our equations. So we have x minus 32 is equal to positive 11. And then we have x minus 32 is equal to negative 11. Now we could just drop the brackets and solve like a regular equation. So x minus 32 is equal to 11. Once we add 32 on both sides, we're going to get x is equal to 43. Then for the second one, we drop the brackets. We have x minus 32 is equal to negative 11. When we add 32, what we're going to get is x is equal to positive 21. So these are the two answers that we would get. And if, let's say they had a 2 out here, we would have to make sure that the absolute value was isolated first before we could actually solve. So if you have a type of problem where absolute value isn't isolated, please make sure you isolate it. So they give us a equation in a table and they want us to pick the correct statement that represents the situation. So they're first talking about the y-intercept. And when we compare both of these y-intercepts, we know that the R function has a smaller or lesser y-intercept, meaning that answer choice D and answer choice C are incorrect. Now, when they talk about the slope, we know the slope for the equation is 2, but we have to find the slope for the table, meaning we're going to use that slope formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, and I'm going to use these 2 points. Doesn't matter which 2 you use, you will get the correct slope. So we have 4 minus negative 2, we're going to get 6, all over 1 minus 0, which is just 1. So we have 6 and we have 2. And when we look at our answer choices A and B, it says that the slope is 2 times the slope of function Q and 3 times the slope of function Q. But when we divide 6 by 2, we're going to get 3. So it's actually 3 times the slope of function Q. So the correct answer is going to be answer choice B. In this example, we're dealing with shading systems of inequalities. And it says that x is greater than or equal to -5. So that means we should have a solid vertical line where x is +5, like you see on my screen. So when we look at answer choice B and D, these two are automatically incorrect. But A and C are correct, right? We have that solid line where x is 5. Now remember, we're going to be shading to the right of 5, right? Because it has to be greater than. Now the second one says that y is less than -3. So we have a dashed line, which both of them have. But if y is only less than -3, that means nothing above this line should be shaded. When we look at answer choice C, one thing that's not good is that there's x's, like you see on my screen in green, that are less than -5. So we know answer choice C cannot be the correct answer choice either. So A is the correct answer. So they give us a quadratic equation and it's not in standard form. So that's the first thing we have to be mindful of. So we're going to put this in standard form. X minus 15x, x squared minus 15x plus 14 is equal to 0. And now all we have to do is factor. So we're looking for these two factors and we have to set them equal to 0 to get the correct answer. So they're going to multiply to give me 14, add to give me 15. So we're going to have x minus 14 times x minus 1. When we set both of these equal to 0, we're going to get our first x of positive 14. And then my second x is going to be x is equal to positive 1. Anytime they give you these type of equations, just please make sure you put it in standard form, then factor it. Problem number 7 is dealing with end behavior. But when we're talking about end behavior for a quadratic function, once a quadratic function is positive, we should know that end behavior is also going to be positive, meaning infinity. And I'm just going to break this down with a graph. So let's say we have a parabola. So as x is approaching the negative side, right, negative infinity, what's happening to y? Y is positive. It's approaching positive infinity. Even though the x's are getting smaller, the y's are getting larger. And then on the other side, right, x is approaching positive infinity, right? The x's are getting larger. What happens to the y's? The y's are approaching the positive side, positive infinity. Now, if this was flipped down, then it would be the other way around. So they give us a radical expression and they want us to find what would the value of x be once we multiply. So the best way to do this, family, is just to multiply our two expressions. Once we multiply, what we're going to get is 5 times the cube root of 108. Now we're dealing with cube roots. So when we break this down, we're going to have 5 times the cube root of 27 times 4. Remember now, 27 is a perfect cube. So this is going to turn into 5 times the cube root of 27, which is 3. And because there's no cube root of 4, it's going to stay under the radical. So we're going to have 15 times the cube root of 4, and the number that's under the radical, which is x, is going to be 4. So in this type of problem, just please make sure you guys know how to break down radicals, whether it's to the second root or cube root. So they give us a diagram and they want us to determine how many more high school juniors and seniors chose honey mustard sauce over sweet and sour sauce. And In these type of problems, it's good to know the amount of students which they tell us. But what we're focusing on is the total amount of students, juniors and seniors, that liked honey mustard. That was 48. Then we get over to sweet and sour. This was 23. And if they're just asking us how many more, this is just a simple subtraction problem, meaning that there was 25 more high school juniors and seniors that chose honey mustard sauce rather than the sweet and sour sauce. They want us to create an inequality to represent the scenario. So two things we need to know. Blackberries cost $8 per pound. Raspberries cost $9. We can only spend a maximum of $40. And they tell us that blackberries will be represented by the variable B and raspberries by the variable R. So when we create this equation or inequality, because it said a maximum, we're going to have 8B, right? Because it's $8 per pound. We don't know how many pounds of blackberries we're getting. Plus 9 times R is going to be less than or equal to 40. Because he could spend a maximum of 40, it doesn't mean he has to spend the whole 40. He could spend less than it or the maximum of $40. So this is why it's an inequality and not an equal sign. If it said Janelle can spend $40, meaning it's equal to 40, then we would have an equal sign. But because of that maximum, this is why it's an inequality for this problem. In the next example, they want us to pick the correct exponential function that models this situation. And if we look back at the formula, right, y is equal to a times 1 plus or minus r to the t power, we know a is the initial value. But the problem tells us that she predicts her tools will have a value of 380 after year 1. So that's T, that's the time period. So A, the initial value, it can't be 380. So C and D are gone. Now what we want to do is focus on A and B and determine what is the value after year 1. So we have V of T is equal to 400 times 0.95 to the 1 power. Anything to the 1 power is just itself. So when we multiply this expression, or simplify it, I should say, V of T after 1 year is 380. So this is probably the correct answer, but let's just make sure. So we go to the second equation. V of T is equal to 399. And then when we subtract 0.19 from 1, we're going to get 0.81 to the first power. So when we multiply 399 times 0.81, what we're going to get is V of T is equal to 323. So we know that answer choice B is not the answer. The correct answer is going to be answer choice A. So if you have these type of problems, it's always good to understand the equation or the formula and how to substitute and simplify to determine if the year 1 and year 2 match up. In the next example, we're dealing with finding the equation for a quadratic function. And we should be able to eliminate answer choice C and D because they are positive quadratic functions, meaning the parabola would open up. Now, the second thing we could do to help determine the correct answer choice is looking at the vertex, which is -3, +4. Now, once we look at both A and B, we should know that if we're going to have a shift to the left of 3, that means what's inside the parentheses should be x plus 3. So our correct answer is going to be answer choice A. This is one of those problems where you don't even need to do any type of work to solve. So this question can be a little bit complicated because there is more than one answer. And once we try to break this radical down, I'm going to show you the 2 possible answers this could be. So let's say we broke this down, right? Both radicals. So radical 24 could be 4 times radical 6, and then radical 8 we could break down as 4 times radical 2. Now when we simplify this one step further, what we're going to get is 2 radical 6 all over 2 times radical 2. So our first answer choice, or should I say equivalent expression, would be answer choice D. Now, if we go further, meaning we're going to finish rationalizing this, we're going to multiply by radical 2 to get rid of that radical in the denominator. So this turns into 2 times radical 12 all over 4. We're going to simplify this one step further, meaning we have 2 times radical 4 times radical 3 all over 4. Now when we simplify that radical, we're going to have 2, that 4 simplifies and comes out as 2. We have radical 3, and this is all over 4. So when we simplify even further, this is just 4 radical 3 all over 4. As a fraction, we could cancel out those 4's, and all we're left with is radical 3 as a final answer, which would be answer choice A. We really hope that this Algebra 1 EOC practice exam review was helpful for you, math family. If it was, smash the like button for us, subscribe to the channel, and leave comments down below if you had questions on this video or if there's other topics you guys would like to see on our channel. Thank you guys so much for watching and continuing to support Algebra 1 with Mr. Peters.